Welcome to Lowell Park, home of the Cotuit Kettleers. We're here today to honor the life and legacy of Arnold Mycock. Arnold passed away on April 22nd of this year, and we decided along with the family that it would be best if we had a celebration of Arnold's life, so that we can remember 92 years of an incredible life and an incredible legacy. Does everybody have a program? Everybody have water? Yes. Wish we had chairs, but we moved quick and we made it happen. Thank you to Bruce Murphy for the idea. We've got a number of speakers here today who hold Arnold in their highest regards. Near and dear, 92 years old. He spent 66 of that volunteering for the Kettleers organization. He was truly a great baseball man, but as I've heard many times, he was a better person. And that says a lot. Because since Arnold came here in 1950, the Cotuit Kettleers organization, under his leadership as GM and tutorship as GM Emeritus, has led this organization to 16 championships, most in the Cape Cod Baseball League. Some of the folks here today may touch on some of that. They've also got personal stories that they'd like to tell. There are so many members of the organization here as volunteers. Thank you very much for all being here. And as far as Arnold's friends and extended family, Cape Cod Baseball League, former players, it's a joy to see a wonderful day. I gave Arnold's grave a call the other day and I said, sunny and 75 and dry. We got 75, I think. Sunny, not too dry though. I'm going to pass it along to Ronnie Mycock. Ron is one of Arnold's nephews. He's a local businessman and a most generous supporter of the Cotuit Kettleers organization for 41 years. What Ron can say to us today is something I don't believe anybody else can who's going to be speaking. Ron has known Arnold all of his life. So I'm going to pass it along right now to Ron Mycock.
Hi. I've learned from past experiences it's better if I write myself something to look at based on my emotions may get away from me. So I'll do my best to look like I'm doing this off the cuff. But on behalf of, see, there I go. On behalf of Arnold's nieces and nephews, I'd like to really thank Arnold's extended family, the Cotuit Kettleers, and their extended family for all the love and caring they have extended to Arnold in his later years of life. It was very apparent to me earlier on that I would not be able to name all the names that would need to be mentioned without missing someone. So it's safer for me to say, please, on Arnold's behalf, accept his thanks for your friendship and love. He felt it and he appreciated it. While thinking about what I might say on behalf of the family, my thoughts were whether or not I could keep my emotions in check. Failure. Enough to get through my words, so hopefully I will. One of my first thoughts of Arnold is just how blessed he truly was. Here we are today at this beautiful Norman Rockwell setting that he was fortunate enough to spend endless hours with many very close friends doing what needed to be done, no matter what, no matter cutting the grass, raking the infield, or cleaning the toilets. No job was beneath him. What was the reward? 66 years of endless hours of enjoyment, working with people who had a similar interest in creating a true field of dreams for young men from all over the country to pursue their dreams, and all just for the pure enjoyment of it. Sounds like an awful good life to me. Arnold now rests just down the hill from where, when there is a ball game going on, he can hear the crowd noise, the crack of the bat when the ball is hit, and the excitement of a game-winning hit. He got to live and die in his own home of over 50 years, just a short drive from the field, surrounded by people that loved him. I would say that was the very definition of a successful life. Arnold was old school. No email or texting for him. The written word was Arnold's friend. He was old school in all ways. I can attest to the fact that Arnold responded in writing to literally thousands of people over the years, both young and old, for the Kettleers, whether it be for the acknowledgement of a donation, a player making an inquiry about the possibility of playing in the league, or a parent extolling the virtues of their ball-playing sons for a spot on the team. Children wanting to become bat boys or keeping in touch with alumni. He responded to them all in writing. I think this is the type of effort that is what endeared Arnold to so many. He cared to take the time to touch people's lives. It's safe to say that one of the main attributes, Arnold's attributes, was that of a giving of himself. One of my childhood memories is spending Saturday mornings with Arnold when we would go to my father's office building in Hyannis, where Arnold spent his work career as a title examiner. My father and Edwin and Arnold were children of the Depression. They were together all of their lives, living just a few miles apart, working in the same office all of their careers. On those Saturdays so long ago, Arnold would do weekend chores at the office building, and after that he would stop at the old American Legion on Barnesville Road to empty the cigarette machine, and they had those, of quarters, and restock it for Saturday nights. Arnold did this for well over 60 years, quietly, without any attention. I mention this because a couple of days ago when I was going through some of his papers, I came across a proclamation in acknowledgement of 60 years of dedication to the American Legion. That was 2006. And I can assure you he was an active member, contributing until his death this past April. That's 70 years. Combine that with the 66 years of contributions to the Kettleers. That's 136 years. That's 36 years of volunteer service to his community. I would proudly suggest Arnold is in a very small class of people that have given of themselves for that many years for nothing more than the enjoyment of giving. For those of you that have heard Arnold speak over the years, the speeches were short and to the point. Hope I'm following in that tradition. We'll miss Arnold, but he'll never be forgotten. He has a building named after him, a championship trophy named after him, but most importantly, he'll be in our hearts. And please don't think it's any accident that he still gets to listen to every game played here at Lowell Park in his new resting place. May we all be so lucky.
There are a lot of folks who are with us today who've known Arnold a lot longer than the 16 years I have. I'm sure, actually I'm not going to be the younger speaker up here. Our second to the last speaker will hold that distinction. But let's remember Arnold's beginning. Arnold was born in Fall River, February 5th, 1924. He was as you can see from your program, he did so much before he came to Cotuit. He was in the Army Air Corps, attended Brown University, graduate of Somerset High School, which he would ultimately become a member of their Athletic Hall of Fame. Arnold did it all. That's even before he came to Cotuit. And when he came to Cotuit, some of the folks here will tell you about the memories of Arnold from back in the late 50s and 60s. Listen to them. The reason I'm not going to be going into Arnold details is specifically the reason Ron Mycock said, I don't want to lose it here. Our next speaker is Bruce Murphy. Bruce is the general manager of the Cotuit Kettleers organization. This is Bruce's 18th year as GM of the Kettleers. We've won 4 championships in that time span. Bruce has been a volunteer. He and his family, Gloria and Allison, started out, and their son back 28 years ago as volunteers with the organization, grew to be the president of this organization as well as general manager. At this point, Bruce Murphy.
everybody for coming. Thanks, Paul, for the introduction. There's a couple seats right in front now for a couple people who want to move down, so we brought them in here for that. It's great that we were able to move in the shade. That's great. We could just take the seats that were lined up against the fence that people put in here for all summer or for the days to move down here just to celebrate coming down, and I'm sure Arnold would appreciate that. And as I was thinking what we're going to say and go over today, there's so many reflections, but one of them was just early coming here and just talking about the memories of Arnold, and everybody had a story and we're just talking to each other, and I think that's the important part, is remembering that. Like Paul said, I go back to the 80s with Arnold and coming to the games, and all of a sudden, kind of getting interesting and watching the parade, and being with my son on the Cotuit fire truck when we used to ride down, and it kind of went to a meeting, and gee, as soon as you go to a meeting, it's a new person that's saying, oh, this looks interesting, what would you like to do? And then all of a sudden, committees come pretty quick, and it's been a great group of people the whole time, and we've really had a lot of fun over the years, so that's been exciting. When I also look at what Arnold's been doing over the 66 years, was one of the things he did enjoy doing was cutting the field. I mean, we think, well, that's a lot, and I had to bring the mower out there today. That's your key word, to check the mower there. So put the banner on it, but he would cut it during the off season right up until November. Before we turn it over to the coaches in the summer, Arnold would be out there cutting it once or twice a week. And now we have the mowers you can ride, but just imagine doing it with a hand mower, or when we first got a Sears Craftsman that might have had a wingspan of 30, 28 inches, how excited we were. So it's a lot of time of cutting that, and that was always a big part of Arnold, and he'd be down here days doing that, or walking his dog, Coco around the field. And when you're down here cutting it, and Joe's helping, and Al and Sue are down here now, it's amazing how many people come in here and just walk around and enjoy the property that the association has built, and Arnold has helped frame over all the years. Because when we first started playing here, Arnold would say, there was no fence out there, the grass was kind of, even if you called it grass, it would just play that way. So, I mean, it's really been developed over, 50, 60 years of what he's done. So we're really appreciative of all that. One of the other things I remember is when we're starting to join, and Arnold cutting the field for all those years. After a few years, I said I would help out, and there was we're all set. So, a couple more years would go. Over the winters, would always meet at Arnold's house, and just discuss what we'd have to do over the winter with Mo Sherman and Art Brennan and a few people, and decide what we'd have to do. And I'd always mention again, I can help with the cutting. No, you're all set. So it took me about 5 or 6 years before I could get even into the rotation of helping move the field. And then it was only part-time, and that was only if they had a second mower going out there, because sometimes it would be two. With Ward trying to keep the mowers going, one was always broken down, so we'd always have to have 2 or 3. So we kind of worked our way around. And then there's a lot of people helping, and it was Manny Robello helped for a lot of years. The Robello family was very important in the development and working with Arnold over this. There's a lot of people in the community that just enjoyed everything as we went through everything. And I'd have a chance to talk to Arnold over the winter, and he'd say, we got the Bat Boys and this and that, and the Bat Boys used to set up over here and used to give them 25 cents a game. And that was always exciting. And the bullpens were over here, and how the little kids would develop, which they're still doing today. I mean, we look and we've had kids in the bullpen here, Bat Boys, they're still working, hopefully they stay on, they go out to the bullpen. Danny Crossan's here, he's gone from Bat Boy to bullpen. Then they've gone on their lives, and we've had a couple come back that are now working on the police force and Barnstable and the fire department and working in town. So it's been a whole community commitment that we've seen develop over the years. We know Arnold's helping put the league together. I mean, it used to be in Upper Cape and Lower Cape for many years. His vision was to have a total Cape team, one team, which was terrific, and he met with Mr. Ford in Orleans, and they would put shape how the league would be today. And, you know, from talking to Arnold, you know, that was great. And he'd always say, well, that was a long road trip down to Orleans. And he'd say, oh, well, that was quite a day. But it was always, we had a restaurant, we went to something. I don't think he ever missed a meal or enjoyed a meal. He was always something. And so that was always a long road trip to Orleans. And sometimes they'd split the road trip and meet in Hyannis. He enjoyed going to the Wareham games and visiting up there. Past players Jim Hubbard and Jack McCarthy enjoyed sitting up there, and he'd always sit on the, what we'd say now is the Wareham side. And he said, well, I always like sitting there. That's where I've sat for 30 years. And I said, well, you know, we're always kind of sitting over behind the dugout with the players. He said, no, I like sitting over here. Plus, I'm behind the screen over there, which he enjoyed. So it's been a lot of friendship over all the years, and I think that's one thing that I carry out is a friendship, a person that just offered guidance the whole time, was always one to say hello and thank you, and just knew everybody in the community. So with those reflections, it's something that I'll remember for many years. Thank you.
Bill started working at the Cape Cod Times in 1974. I had to think about that. And in 1985, Bill became the sports editor and has held that position since at the Cape Cod Times. Bill and Arnold go back to the scoring days. There are so many, there's been a reunion of some of the scorers. Judy Scarafile, Mike Curran, Steve, I can never pronounce his last name, Chinook, obviously Arnold, and Bill Higgins. The folks that did the scoring back in the 70s in the Cape League, it was a labor of love. Now I believe you get paid, if I'm correct. We do get paid. Scorers get paid, bat boys get a lot more money. But the good thing is everybody's learning about the game, or if they haven't learned about the, or they're learning, or they're extending their knowledge of the game. And to tell you a lot about that, a lot more in the early days, Bill Higgins from the Cape Cod Times.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you all for being here. And it's really a privilege and an honor to be included in this program. And like Ronnie, I spend most of my time, and I'm much more comfortable behind the keyboard writing than I am standing and speaking. So forgive me if I have to refer to some notes to express my feelings today. But as Paul said, I go back to the early 70s with Arnold. I was actually introduced to the Cotuit Circle by Mike Curran, who went on to become the president of the Cape Cod Baseball League, and Steve Chinecka. Mike and Steve were sports writers at the Cape Cod Times when I joined the staff in the early 70s, and they were really mentors to me and introduced me to Arnold and introduced me to Cotuit. Mike and Arnold were lifelong friends, and Mike came back in the spring for Arnold's service, and he comes back every summer as Steve does, and it was always a reunion to come by Cotuit and see Arnold and, you know, just spend time at one of, I think, all of our favorite ballparks. When I first started at the newspaper, Steve and Mike would assign me to Cape League games, and I soon discovered that one of my favorite places to come to was Cotuit. I grew up in Harwich. White House Field was a wonderful place to be, but Cotuit, as you look around here, it's just pure baseball. And a big part of the experience for me was becoming friendly with Arnold. And I was young and inexperienced at the time, and sometimes maybe not as responsible as I should have been. And occasionally I would show up a little bit late for games. And it would be the second inning or the third inning, and of course I was the official scorer. I was supposed to be keeping a document of the game. And I was in trouble. Was it a hit in the first inning or an error? Was it an earned run or not? How did they score the runs? What happened? I would panic, but I always knew Arnold would have my back. Arnold was in the dugout. He kept a meticulous scorebook. He was accurate as could be. His integrity was beyond reproach. He wasn't favoring Cotuit or anybody else. So I knew I could always go to Arnold and reconstruct what had happened. And so I learned when I was irresponsible, and I only tried to, I didn't try to be that way, I was that way, but I learned my lessons. And I did show up on time, but on those occasions when I didn't, Arnold had my back. And I didn't have to panic too often. But that was what Arnold was. He had everyone's back. He was committed to his community, he was committed to his friends, and certainly he was committed to Cotuit. The other thing about Arnold is that he was just such a special person. He didn't have an ego. I used to spend time with him in the off season with Mike and Steve, and we would go to basketball games, or we would socialize a little bit together away from baseball. He had a really dry wit. He had a great sense of humor, and he would make jokes, and sometimes I wouldn't realize that I was the butt of the joke. But we would always have a good laugh. And that was the other thing about Arnold, that when he passed in April, I remember getting the news. I think it was early Friday morning, and I had been off Cape, and I got the news. We knew, of course, that he was failing and maybe in his final days, and I had spent a lot of time thinking about Arnold. And when I got the news, before I went to the office to write a story about him and try to do justice to a life that, you know, was difficult to describe in words, I came by here. I just drove in the parking lot because I wanted to see Lowell Park and I wanted to see Cotuit, and just spend a couple of quiet moments by myself, thinking about the friendship that I had had with Arnold for more than 40 years. And then I went in and I tried to write a story about him. But the thing that I took from Arnold and that I continue to take to this day is that it was always a better day, and I always felt better when I was in his company. And when I think about Arnold, I always feel better about everything. Thank you for having me today.
But he says, there's a person I want you to meet and get to know, because he could be your mentor and help you in running a local franchise and a team. And it was Arnold Mycock. And Arnold and Fred and I met several times. I kind of wondered sometimes what I was getting into. But Arnold assured me that anytime I had any issues, any questions or anything, to call him. And boy, did I. But I'll never forget over the years, the three amigos, Art, Mo, and Arnold, would come to Falmouth, and every night they came, they would sit in the visitors' bleachers on the back seats, and I'd go sit with them. And probably for about a half hour before the game start, we probably resolved all the world issues, league issues, and everything. And at the end of the game, I'd walk out with them up the hill, and Art would always have a wisecrack. He'd say, "Chuck, thanks for the win." And Arnold would look at me and he'd say, "But Chuck, it was a good played game." But that was Arnold. But this is an honor for me to be able to speak today, again, on behalf of the Cape League. The organization that he's created here is a foundation that can never be destroyed. And on behalf of all the volunteers throughout the league, that some of them are here today from other franchises, I thank you. And for all our supporters, thank you as well, because this is Arnold's family away from his real family. And I thank you all very much.
I'm not sure there's much more for me to say after. When Paul asked me to say a few words about Arnold, I was delighted to be able to speak about this wonderful man. I first met Arnold in 1961 when my father drove me here from New York. I didn't know a lot about the Cape League, but he had recruited a number of players from Holy Cross that year, and I was fortunate to be one of them. I tell you this because the fact that he recruited me altered the direction of my life. And here's what I mean. I played 3 years, great time, something I'll never forget. I met my wife here in Cotuit. She was a summer resident and a lifeguard at Ropes Beach. That was an important step. We just celebrated our 51st wedding anniversary. Summer home, permanent home. Our kids grew up down here. My grandkids come now. So it's all wonderful. And we have amassed a lot of friends over 50 years. So I thank Arnold for that effort that he made to recruit me as a Kettleer. I want to tell a quick story about Arnold. It happened about 10 years ago. My wife and I invited Arnold to dinner at the Regatta with a mutual friend. We were sitting at a lovely restaurant just finishing the first course. I was having my last Cotuit oyster, and the chef came out in his chef's outfit, carrying this baseball bag signed by the Kettleers team. I have no idea how he knew Arnold was in the restaurant, but he just obviously was proud of this bat, and he brought this object to the table. Everyone stopped eating, turned and looked at this ceremony. It reminded me of when they take a birthday cake out from the kitchen. Everybody stops and looks, and there's hushed tones. Well, that's what happened. And he asked Arnold to sign the bat. He did, and after some small talk, the chef returned to the kitchen with a bounce in his step. He was very, very happy. That made a special night even more special. I think Arnold, being shy, was somewhat embarrassed, but we certainly enjoyed it. Arnold had a special quality that I felt, and maybe you shared the same thing, the same feeling. We used to sit in the stands and watch the game with Arnold. The fellow here, Jerry Curtis, is here today. He and I would sit with Arnold, and as someone alluded to, Arnold kept score diligently. So there was no speaking, except when you could find a minute when he wasn't scoring. But the thing about Arnold, he made you feel, he was so interested and so positive that you couldn't help but enjoy his company. And I believe it was very, very sincere. And when I left the ballpark, I always felt good and uplifted because I had sat with Arnold and experienced his personality, his kind personality. So that's the memory I have of him, and it's just an enduring, lasting memory. He's done a lot, obviously, for the league and for the Kettleers, and he'll always be in my memory. Arnold Mycock, the general manager, the gentleman, and someone who lived in my mind for a long time. So thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I don't know about youngster, I turned 50 in April. So. But we've heard a lot of people talk about Arnold and how they felt when they were in his presence, and I count myself among that group of people. Arnold just made your life better. He made your day better. He made watching games at this ballpark better. He made attending games across the league better. And as I got to know Arnold and know where he sat at the various ballparks, it was always a pleasure to see him at a game, particularly in the last few years of his life. And I'd love going over to say hello to him and check in, oftentimes watching the end of the game when the light faded with Arnold. It was a special treat. As Paul mentioned, I came to the Cotuit in 2007, but I really didn't get to know anybody for a few years. It took until about 2010 before I really got to know some of the great people that run this organization. And I knew Arnold by name in 2010, but 5 years ago tomorrow, I got one of the best emails of my entire life. It came from Martha Johnston. It was a Sunday in July, and I was sitting at my desk working on some photographs, and all of a sudden a bleep came across my computer. I opened up the email, and it was Martha inviting me to join her and Arnold at Lindsay's restaurant on the way to a game in Cotuit. I mean, in Wareham. And my heart started pounding. So excited.
That's Arnold.
At least it didn't collapse all the way.
There was Arnold saying hello.
But it was a great email, and my heart started pounding, and I was so excited because I was going to have the opportunity to spend personal time with this man that I knew was highly revered. And so I shut down my computer, I got in my car, I was worried about off-Cape traffic on a Sunday in July, and I raced to Lindsay's. There was absolutely no traffic, so I got there about an hour early and sat and waited, and Martha and Arnold came in, and I think they were both pretty surprised to see me since I neglected to respond to the email. But we had a wonderful, delightful meal at Lindsay's. That ended up becoming an annual tradition. It was so enjoyable to spend time with Arnold, not only at a ballpark or a ball game, but at having a meal. As someone alluded to earlier, he loved to eat, and he had a wonderful appetite. But it was just great talking baseball with Arnold, talking about the Kettleers in general. with Arnold, and some people have mentioned his sense of humor, and that man made me laugh a lot. One story, I went over to his house in 2013, I believe, before the opening day. We were working here at the field early, and I had a few hours to kill, and I didn't know what to do. And the idea hit me to go over and see Arnold. So I drove over to his house. He immediately invited me in, and we talked about a lot of things, about the season. And at one point, he pulled out a photograph that he had received just recently in the mail, and it was from a Kettleers team in the 60s somewhere. And Arnold showed me the photo, and he went down the line of each player, and as most of you know, Arnold was a true baseball fan, and he had an absolute gift for remembering the baseball statistics of the players who played on this field behind me here. And he told me about each one's statistics, what school he came from, and then he got to the last player in the back row, and he told me the player's name, but he didn't tell me anything about the player's statistics. So I paused, and I was curious why that didn't happen. And then he told me that the player, when he was here in Cotuit, worked at Baxter's Fish Market in Hyannis. And then he just shook his head and said, always smelled like a fish. He just had a wonderful, wonderful way of expressing humor and making me laugh, and I enjoyed that very much. He was a very, very special man. I'm delighted that I got to know him. Most of you here have known him for far longer than I did, but I'm not jealous at all. Instead, I'm very grateful that I found my way to this park in 2007 and got to know the wonderful people in Cotuit, and especially Arnold. He was a dear friend, and I loved him very much. I miss him, but I'm grateful for having known him. And I thank Martha from the bottom of my heart for that 2011 email. So, thank you very much for allowing me to participate.
Paul, and to Judy, and to Bruce, and to my coach, Jimmy Hubbard, back there, and to all of you, and to Ron Mycock. He has Arnold's smile. That's what I remember about Arnold. His smile. He was shy with that smile, and he wouldn't say much, but the smile would say so much. The last time I saw him was about a year ago in Chatham, in the parking area in right field. He couldn't get out of his car. He was not well, but his mind was always 100%. And every year I would come, since I left the Kettleers the summer because of the connection with Barbara, and I loved the Cape, we would come and spend a couple of weeks here. And I would always come by to see Arnold, and he'd always say, well, did you bring your check this time? I did. But this last time that I saw him, we would always reminisce about the players on our team. And you're right, his memory was fantastic. He knew what every player had been doing. And I'd asked him about a certain relief pitcher, I won't say his name, that had played with me, and I'd asked him the year, whatever happened to so-and-so? And I remember Arnold saying, well, he's not doing too well. I said, well, what happened? He said, he died. And then he laughed, you know that laugh. And that was Arnold. The sense of humor. 1967, by the way, Paul is being very generous. The reason I did not go into baseball was I wasn't that good. I was a relief pitcher. I couldn't make it as a pitcher, as a starting pitcher. Jimmy will tell you, he told me, you know what I remember about you? Every time you threw a curve, your cap would fall off. Didn't remember my fastball or anything. But, and this is also a true story. When I came to see Arnold once, I'd kind of gotten out of politics. He said, well, you know, you've got all these titles. What should I call you? And I said, Cotuit Kettleer, pitcher. And then I said, but Arnold, you can call me Your Highness too. He laughed, you know, that smile. In 1967, I remember Manny Robello. He was at Arnold's house, this huge guy. He didn't have a shirt on, big muscles.
And Arnold was, you know, he's a smart guy. He'd say, Bill, and I came with a guy named Steve Vaughn. We called him Archie Vaughn from Southeast Missouri. Switch hitter, home run hitter. And Arnold was telling us where we were going to go live. We were going to go live with a family down the road from him. Remember, he served us bologna sandwiches. He liked to eat, but he didn't like to get his guests food. But he was always grounded in his love for Cotuit. And I remember him talking about Manny Rebello. You know, this guy's a real strong supporter. And then a twinkle in his eye. And he's got pretty daughters too. and I saw them here, and they're still very pretty. You know, I could go on and on with stories, and Barbara, my wife, she always claims when I speak, you know, I'm a politician. By the way, I went into politics since I couldn't make it in sports, in baseball. And, you know, unfortunately, it's one of the least popular professions right now. But these were golden years here. And I think all of you are part of this tradition that Arnold imparted on everybody. You know, I never felt that Arnold knew, I never asked him, well, what's your politics? Are you a Republican? And he only cared about the Kettleers. I remember one time bringing a check to him, House of Representatives, Honorable so-and-so. And at the bottom, it said Sergeant at Arms. And Arnold asked me, do you work for the Sergeant at Arms? Then he said to me, do you know Barney Frank? I never knew, you know, I never knew he cared about his love for the town, for you, for baseball. And at the time, you know, things were different. I see some of the older ball players here. And by the way, I'm for you getting in the Hall of Fame. I'm for you. Paul and Bruce always stay in touch, and I appreciate that very much. But you know, one of the things you remember are the traditions here. And in those days, in 1968, this was Arnold. I don't know if he did it willingly, but Nick Furlong and I, Nick was the star pitcher of the team. There was Nick and Jim Curry, who, by the way, his son was a great tennis player. And Nick was a great pitcher. And Nick and I got the job that Arnold got us to work for a guy named H.A. Crawford. He was a builder. He was a developer. And Crawford really worked us very hard. I mean, you ball players today, what do? Baseball clinic stuff? I mean, we would work like hours in a Gravely tearing down the forest that this was what Mr. Crawford was doing. In fact, when the Barnstable Land Trust came to me a couple of years ago, they wanted me to speak at a fundraiser for the surrounding Lowell Park area that was acquired. I said, well, I got to do it. I participated in destroying a lot of it. But I felt guilty about that. But anyway, I'm here because, you know, when you look back, and this is a life and legacy, you remember the good things in life. You remember tradition, family, neighborhood, church. You remember sports. I recently had an argument. You know, I'm an old timer, and I am a Red Sox fan, but my favorite player was Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle. And I had an argument with this guy in Chatham about who was a better player, Derek Jeter or Mickey Mantle, because Jeter was getting all these awards and he was retiring. And I said, no, he's not in a class of Mantle. So I sparked a real debate, but it was the kind of good debate that people should have about America's tradition, about America's heroes. You know, today there's a lot of turmoil. I don't have to tell you about what happened in Nice or in Baton Rouge or all around the country. People are divided. You know, the dysfunctional government right now. And if you remember watching Field of Dreams movie, one of the last scenes, when James Earl Jones, who's that writer, Terry, is talking to Kevin Costner, Ray Kinsella, at the very end, when Shoeless Joe Jackson tells him, "We want you to come with us, Terry." And Ray Kinsella says, "Well, what about me? Do I go?" "No." Joe Jackson says, "No." James Earl Jones gets up and says, "Ray, there's one constant in life. There's one thing that unifies our country. It's baseball. It's baseball. Stay back. Stay back." And so, you know, as we remember this good and decent man, and I pay tribute to his family, and I can't believe how close Ron Mycock's smile is to Arnold. I can just see him. And I remember seeing Arnold. One time Barbara and I came to see him, and I was told, "Well, you can't see him." I said, "Why not?" "Well, he's mowing the lawn." I said, "But I've got a good check." He said, "Well, you got to wait till he finishes." I won't tell you who said that to me. But there he was, alone, field of dreams. I can just see him with his cap. That cap, you know, that's a nice cap he had. He had the ugliest, oldest Cotuit Kettleer cap, which I never thought he'd ever take off. And you have those very fond memories. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored that you've asked me. And now I'm going to get to the best part of my speech. The end. Thank you.
Kettleers organization celebrates its 70th season in 2016. And one thing we have never done is we have never retired a number. There's nothing more appropriate than retiring in honor of Arnold Mycock. Thanks everybody for being here today. Can't thank the Mycock family enough for helping us with this event, and all the speakers behind me who gave of their time, and all the folks here who came out to celebrate Arnold's life and legacy. Believe we've done that. Should you if you haven't been to a game this year, please come to a game. I'm looking at faces. People have come to games here. And we can thank Arnold not only for baseball, we can thank Arnold for building a community. Even though we all think it was just about baseball, Arnold helped plenty of community organizations, and we thank him for that very much. Have a great rest of your Saturday.